What happens when a legendary singer, a woman whose voice defined entire generations, finally reaches her breaking point on live television? In just 28 seconds, one dismissive comment, one careless gesture, and decades of grace, professionalism, and respect collapse into the most stunning walkout daytime TV has ever seen. Petula Clark sits across from Lorraine Kelly beneath the bright studio lights. The cameras hum. The audience waits. Everything appears perfectly routine. She's there to talk about her extraordinary career, her new projects, the timeless music that shaped eras. It should have been a tribute. It should have been effortless, but instead, something shifts. Lorraine greets her with a smile. The audience applauds. And Petula returns the warmth, elegant, poised, a master of the craft. She's done thousands of interviews. She knows the rhythm. She knows the dance. Yet within minutes, a strange tension creeps in. So Petula, Lorraine begins. Leaning back with a casual flick of her hand. You've been around for quite a long time now, haven't you? The studio tightens. Petula's smile stiffens just a touch. Yes, she replies with practiced grace. I've been very fortunate. But Lorraine barrels ahead. All these young stars today must seem so different to you, right? Petula shifts. Well, every generation has its own voice. That's the beauty of music. Lorraine doesn't hear her, or doesn't care. Downtown, that was your big hit, wasn't it? What was that 60 years ago? Petula corrects, gently, politely. But Lorraine waves it away like trivia. Well, that was really your only major hit, wasn't it? After that, things sort of fizzled out. Silence. Even the camera operator freezes. The warmth drains from Petula's face. Actually, she says, sitting up, that's not accurate. I had many successful records after Downtown. I know a place, my love, don't sleep in the subway. This is my song. 15 consecutive top 40 hits in the United States alone. Lorraine barely acknowledges it. Well, most people only remember Downtown. Perhaps in your circles, Petula replies quiet. But edged like glass, Lorraine presses on. Oblivious, singers from your era always end up doing nostalgia tours. Don't you get tired of singing the same songs over and over? Petula breathes in slowly. Music creates memories. That's not a burden. It's a gift. But it must feel a bit sad, Lorraine continues, tilting her head in fake concern, knowing your best years are behind you. That the music world has moved on without you. The room freezes. Petula's hand curls on the armrest. My best years are not behind me, she says, voice icy but controlled. I am still recording, still performing, still creating. Lorraine laughs light, dismissive, cruel. Oh, come on, Petula. Be honest. No one's buying new music from artists your age. People want the version of you they remember, not who you are now. That's the moment everything breaks. Petula's eyes sharpen. What exactly are you trying to say, Lorraine? I'm just being realistic, Lorraine shrugs. The industry has changed. You had your time. Now, it's all streaming and TikTok things you probably don't even understand. I understand plenty, Petula snaps. What I don't understand is why you invited me here if you have so little respect for what I've accomplished. Lorraine lifts her hands, mocking innocence. Oh, don't be so sensitive. I'm not saying you weren't good back in the day. I'm just saying. The day has passed. A gasp ripples through the studio. Petula goes completely still. Then, with immaculate calm, she reaches down and unclips her microphone. The soft click echoes through the speakers. What are you doing? Lorraine asks, the confidence draining from her face. I'm leaving, Petula says, rising with quiet dignity. I came here for a conversation, not to be patronized and belittled. You can't just walk off where in the middle of an interview. An interview, Petula says, placing the microphone gently on the chair, requires two people showing mutual respect. This is simply you talking down to someone you've decided is irrelevant. She turns toward the exit, and the studio watches history unfold. I won't sit here and be treated this way. Lorraine's face darkens. A flush rises. She glances at her crew, grasping for control, then snaps back toward Petula. This is ridiculous. You're being oversensitive. I was just making conversation. No, Petula says, her voice ringing through the studio like a bell. You were being rude. There is a difference. Lorraine's composure fractures. I've interviewed hundreds of celebrities. Nobody has ever walked off my show before. Then perhaps Petula replies, no one has ever been disrespected quite like this. Or perhaps they simply had less self-respect than I do. A murmur ripples across the audience: shock, approval, disbelief. Lorraine looks around, flailing for authority. Petula, please, she says, the tone closer to command than invitation. Sit back down. We can talk about something else. I don't think so, Petula replies, turning to go. But Lorraine can't let it end. You do realize how this makes you look, don't you? She calls out, storming off like some diva. People will think you can't handle a simple interview. Petula turns slowly, her expression serene, her eyes blazing. Let them think whatever they want. I know the truth. I've been in this business longer than you've been alive, Lorraine. I've worked with the greatest talents on earth. I've performed for presidents and queens. I've earned my respect decades of it. I don't need to prove anything to you or to anyone watching. Well, that's a lovely speech. Lorraine sneers, now dripping with sarcasm. But you're still walking off my show. That's incredibly unprofessional. Unprofessional. Petula repeats, her voice finally cracking with real anger. You want to talk about unprofessional. You invited me here under the pretense of celebrating my career. And instead, you've spent every minute implying I'm washed up, irrelevant, and too old to matter. That isn't journalism. That is disrespect, and frankly cruelty. The studio freezes. Jobs, reputations, careers all teeter in the air. Lorraine rises from her chair as well. Face tight, voice brittle. I was trying to have an honest conversation. Maybe you're just not used to people being real with you anymore. Maybe everyone around you just tells you what you want to hear, honest. Petula fires back, her voice rising. There has been nothing honest about this. You've been condescending since the moment I sat down. Every question has been crafted to diminish me, to shame me, to remind your audience that you think my time has passed. I'm a journalist. Lorraine shouts defensively. I ask the questions people want answered. No, Petula says sharply. You ask the questions that make you feel important. There's a difference between journalism and cruelty. And what you've been doing is the latter. Lorraine stares at her, stunned. She wasn't prepared for this. She wasn't prepared for someone who wouldn't fold. I can't believe you're saying this, she whispers. I've always been fair. Fair. Petula shakes her head slowly. You wouldn't know fair if it sat in that chair and sang downtown for you. You've been dismissive, condescending, and mean-spirited. I've been polite. And you've repaid that with contempt. This is absurd. Lorraine sputters. You're twisting my words. Am I? Petula asks. Let's review. The audience holds its breath. You pointed out how long I've been around, as if longevity were something to mock. You dismissed my catalog, reducing 30 years of hits to one song. You implied I do nostalgia tours because I have nothing new to offer. You told me my best years are behind me. You suggested I don't understand modern technology. And finally, you declared my time has passed. Did I miss anything? Silence, total. Crushing not Lorraine opens her mouth, but finds nothing, no defense. No excuse, no escape. "I thought so," Petula says softly. "Now, if you'll excuse me. I have better places to be than somewhere I'm not valued." She turns once more toward the edge of the set. But Lorraine can't stop herself. "You're making a huge mistake, Petula. Walking out like this, you'll regret it." Petula pauses hand on the curtain. She looks back one final time. Her voice is calm, measured, devastating. "The only thing I regret, Lorraine, is not walking off sooner." Studio doesn't breathe. Not once. "I've spent my entire career conducting myself with grace and professionalism. I've weathered criticism, changes, challenges that would break lesser artists. But I have never ever allowed anyone to speak to me with such blatant disrespect. And I won't start now." Lorraine's voice cracks. "So that's it. You're just going to leave?" "Yes," Petula says simply. And with that, she turns, she walks, and she is gone. "I am," Petula says, steady and unflinching. "Because I value myself too much to stay somewhere I'm being treated like yesterday's news. And if you had any respect for the people you interview, you would understand that." With that, Petula Clark turns and walks off the set. The camera instinctively follows her for a few seconds as she moves through the backstage corridor, her head high, her posture immaculate, every step precise. She doesn't look back. She doesn't hesitate. She simply leaves. Back on set, Lorraine stands frozen, alone under the lights. Her crew stares. The audience stares. The cameras keep rolling. She opens her mouth once, twice, trying to summon something, anything, but nothing arrives. Finally, she faces the camera. Well, she manages, her voice trembling. "That was unexpected. We'll take a quick break and be right back. But everyone watching knows the damage is irreparable. In under 10 minutes, a harmless interview has detonated into a full-scale catastrophe. The audience sits in stunned silence. Crew members exchange glances, hands half-raised, unsure whether to act or simply witness. In the green room, Petula gathers her things. Her hands are sure. Her face serene, composed in a way only someone with decades of poise can be. A production assistant hurries over, nervous and wide-eyed. "Miss Clark," she says cautiously, "is there anything we can do? Can I get you anything?" Petula smiles, a soft, warm, almost maternal smile completely at odds with the storm that just passed. "That's very kind of you, dear, but I'm perfectly all right. I just need to leave. I'm so sorry about what happened," the young woman whispers. "You didn't deserve that. It shouldn't have happened." "Thank you," Petula says, touching her arm gently. "But please don't worry. I've been in this business a long time. I know how to handle myself." By the time she walks toward the exit, word has already spread. Whispers trail behind her. Phones are being raised. Everyone knows they have just witnessed a moment, something rare, something seismic. Because legends don't walk off talk shows. Not Petula Clark. Not the woman synonymous with grace, steadiness, and professionalism. And that is precisely what makes this moment so powerful. This was not a tantrum. This was not ego. This was not diva behavior. This was dignity drawing a line. Back on set, Lorraine tries to pull herself together during the commercial break. Producers crowd around her, their voices low and urgent. The audience buzzes like a hive, processing the spectacle they just absorbed. And very quickly, one truth becomes obvious. The room is not on Lorraine's side. The whispers drifting through the seating area are damning. That was cruel. She didn't deserve that. Good for her for leaving. Why was Lorraine so rude? When the show returns, Lorraine sits stiffly at her desk. Petula's chair still sits beside her, empty, glaring, accusatory. Lorraine clears her throat and faces the camera. As you saw, she begins carefully. Our guest, Petula Clark, decided to leave the interview. I want to apologize if anything I said was misunderstood or taken the wrong way. That was never my intention. Even now, her apology feels like a dodge. She isn't apologizing for her behavior. She's apologizing for Petula's reaction. Deflecting, reframing, pretending misunderstanding instead of ownership. The rest of the show limps forward, hollow and uncomfortable. Lorraine introduces segments, interviews, guests, moves through the script, but the air has changed. Every camera operator, every audience member, every viewer at home is still replaying the moment. The empty chair might as well be shouting. Across town, Petula sits in her car, watching the city glide past the windows. Her phone vibrates non-stop inside her bag calls, messages, notifications, but she lets it ring. She needs a moment of stillness. She thinks about the interviews she's done, the warm ones, the forgettable ones, even the challenging ones. But nothing like what happened today. It wasn't the questions. They were rude, yes, but rudeness she could handle. It was the attitude behind them, the quiet dismissal of her worth. The implication that age erases relevance. The ease with which Lorraine treated belittlement as honesty. Petula has never demanded special treatment. She has always been gracious, patient, and professional. But there is a difference between humility and letting yourself be diminished. Between being kind and being a doormat. And when Lorraine declared her time had passed, something snapped perfectly, cleanly, decisively into place. Petula realized she had a choice. She could swallow the slight smile through it, walk out feeling small. Or she could stand literally and figuratively and say, "No, this is not acceptable. I will not participate in this." And once she made that choice, the rest was simple. She unclipped her microphone, rose from her chair, and walked away. No theatrics. No raised voice. Just a quiet, decisive exit that said everything words could not. And in that single gesture, she delivered a message not only to Lorraine, but to every person watching at home. You do not have to endure disrespect. You do not have to smile through cruelty. You can say no. You can leave. You can choose yourself. Back in the studio, the fallout began instantly. Producers scrambled, tripping over each other as they tried to salvage what was left of the show. The social media team watched in real time as the clip exploded online. Audience members filed out of the studio, whispering in disbelief, phones already in hand, eager to tell the world what they had just witnessed. And Lorraine. She sat alone in her dressing room after the show, staring into the mirror, angry, defensive, bewildered that anyone thought she'd crossed a line. In her mind, she had simply been doing her job, asking tough questions, keeping it real, making television. But that was precisely the problem in her pursuit of a moment. She forgot about the human being sitting across from her. She forgot that Petula Clark is not a nostalgic footnote, not a novelty, not a relic. She is a person with dignity, a lifetime of achievements, and a legacy that deserves respect. Lorraine called it honesty. But cruelty is not honesty. Punching down is not bravery. And belittling someone is not journalism. If she had approached the conversation with curiosity instead of condescension, she could have uncovered something meaningful. Petula has lived through eras of transformation in the music industry. She has stories, wisdom, and insight that only decades of experience can produce. Instead, Lorraine chose to focus on age, relevance, and diminishing her guest. And in doing so, she diminished herself. Respect is never something you demand. It is something you earn by giving it. Petula Clark had nothing to prove. Her work, her history, her influence, those speak louder than any interview ever could. Walking off that set didn't tarnish her. It elevated her. Because the moment audiences will remember is not a question Lorraine asked, But the moment Petula stood up, spoke with her feet, and walked out with her spine straight and her self-respect intact, a woman in her 80s showing more composure, strength, and dignity than a host half her age in the car. She finally checked her phone. Messages poured in, friends, colleagues, fans, all offering support, all telling her they saw what happened, all saying they were proud. She smiled softly and put the phone away. Their kindness was welcome, but unnecessary. She didn't need reassurance. She knew she had done the right thing. Standing up for yourself is never wrong. Not when it's public. Not when it's messy. Not when it's uncomfortable. For decades, Petula Clark has lifted people up with her music. She has conducted herself with grace, kindness, and unwavering professionalism. But grace is not submission. Professionalism is not obedience. Kindness is not self-erasure. Sometimes the most graceful act is walking away. Sometimes the most professional thing you can do is refuse to participate. Sometimes kindness to yourself means rejecting someone else's cruelty. As the city faded behind her, she felt a gentle calm settle in. She knew there would be chatter, debate, criticism, think pieces. Some would say she should have stayed. Some would insist she overreacted. But she knew the truth. She answered every question politely. She attempted to steer the conversation back to something meaningful. She kept her composure as the tone worsened. She gave that interview every chance, and when it became clear Lorraine intended to reduce her to a punchline, to treat her as if her achievements were dust, she made her choice. She chose dignity. She chose boundaries. She chose herself. That is what people will remember. Not a meltdown, not a diva moment, but a declaration. A masterclass in self-worth delivered with quiet power. Petula Clark walked onto that set as a legend. She walked off it as something even more powerful. A legend who refused to be diminished. She walked off as something more, an example. A reminder, proof that you are never too old, never too accomplished, never too far along in your career to stand up for yourself. The interview had been slated for 30 minutes. It lasted less than 10. But in those few minutes, something extraordinary happened. Something that went beyond television, beyond entertainment, beyond the usual spectacle of daytime talk shows. A woman faced blatant disrespect, measured her choices, and chose dignity over compliance. She chose truth over politeness. She chose herself over the show, and in doing so, Petula Clark reminded everyone watching of a truth we often forget. We teach people how to treat us. We have the power to step away from situations that diminish us. Grace does not mean submission. Kindness does not mean erasing yourself. Professionalism does not mean tolerating cruelty. Boundaries and self-respect can coexist with warmth, generosity. And poised Lorraine Kelly learned that lesson the hard way. She pushed too far, dismissed too casually, underestimated too greatly. She thought she could control the narrative, manufacture drama, create entertainment at another person's expense. Instead, she created a moment that will define her differently than she intended, not as a fearless interviewer asking tough questions, but as someone who confused cruelty for honesty, condescension for candor, and learned too late that some people will not tolerate being disrespected no matter the camera's audience or consequences. And Petula Clark, the legendary singer who has brought joy to millions, who has navigated the treacherous landscape of show business for decades, who has maintained her dignity through every challenge, added one more remarkable achievement to her legacy. She showed the world how to walk away. She showed that sometimes the most powerful word is enough. She demonstrated that respect is not negotiable. Dignity is not optional, and worth is never determined by someone else's opinion. In 28 seconds, one dismissive comment sparked a walkout that will be dissected, analyzed, and remembered long after the episode fades into television history. But more than that, it ignited a conversation about how we treat others, the value of experience, and the difference between honest dialogue and casual cruelty. Petula Clark did not storm off in anger, though she had every right. She left with composure, clarity, and purpose. She stated her case, stood her ground, and walked away. And in doing so, she gave everyone watching permission to do the same in their own lives. Permission to say no. Permission to demand better. Permission to choose themselves. That is the real story. Not the fleeting drama of a celebrity walking off a talk show, but the enduring truth beneath it. Respect matters. Dignity matters. How we treat people, especially those we perceive as vulnerable or past their prime, reveals everything about who we are. Lorraine Kelly thought she was conducting an interview. Instead, she delivered a masterclass in what not to do. And Petula Clark, with grace, strength, and quiet power, taught everyone watching how to respond when someone tries to diminish you. Walk away. Hold your head high. Know your worth, and never, ever let anyone convince you your time has passed, because as long as you refuse that narrative, as long as you stand up for yourself, as long as you choose dignity over convenience, your time will never pass. Your value will never diminish. Your worth will never be measured by someone else's narrow perspective. That is what happened when a legend walked onto a talk show expecting respect and left when she didn't receive it. That is what happened in 28 seconds that changed everything. That is what happened when Petula Clark reminded the world that some people will never be diminished, no matter how hard others try.